Hi, in this video we will be discussing zeros and their multiplicity. Well, this is another video for polynomial functions. We did discuss the zeros before and their meaning, but now we will discuss the meaning of multiplicity of zeros. In our previous video, we had the zeros of the function and we used them to find the linear factors. Then from the linear factors we could find the equation. In this video, we are going to do the opposite. We are going to start with the function and try to find its zeros by finding the linear factors. When we say finding the linear factors, it basically means that we are going to factor this function. Now, this is a cubic function, but lucky for us, you have x cubed minus 4x squared plus 4x. So all terms have x, so I can actually take x as a common factor. If we take x as a common factor, we are left with x squared minus 4x plus 4. Now this is a perfect square trinomial, but if you can't see that or if you don't know what it means, you can just factor normally. You know that you have x in both binomials, and you know that the two numbers you need to find here have the product of 4, positive 4, so they are of the same sign, and their sum is negative 4. So if their sum is negative, then you know that both of them are negative, and the two numbers that give you a product of 4 and the sum of negative 4 are negative 2 and negative 2. Now you can check by multiplication. If you get back to the original equation or function, then you know that your work is correct. This factored form we have here can be rewritten, like we can rewrite it as x multiplied by x minus 2 all squared. Okay? Now, when we find the zeros from the factored form, we are going to say that either x is equal to 0, and we have another solution where x minus 2 is equal to 0. But this happened twice, so x is equal to 2. Now, if we find the zeros from this step here, we will find that x is equal to 0, x is equal to 2, then x is equal to 2 again. And that will give you 3 zeros. In this case, it gave you only 2 zeros, but one of them happened twice. What do you mean by it happened twice? It's repeated. If it's repeated, this is the meaning of multiplicity. So when you factor and you have the linear factor multiplied by itself twice, or to the power of 2 like this, then the multiplicity of this 0 is 2. So if I want to state the zeros and their multiplicity, I'm going to say x is equal to 0. This is my first 0, and it happened only once, so it has a multiplicity of 1. And the other 0 is x is equal to 2, and because it happened twice, it has the multiplicity of 2. It happened twice. Now, why are we sketching in this question? Because actually the multiplicity of the zeros affects the way the graph will behave. Now let's try to sketch this graph together. So I have the x-axis. Well, it's not really accurate, but it's just a sketch. And when I want to sketch, the first thing I can plot on my graph is the zeros. I know that I have a 0 at 2 and a 0 at x equal to 0. So I'm going to do that here at x equal to 0. This is my first 0, and at x equal to 2, this is my second 0. Now, after plotting the zeros, I need to look at the end behavior. And how do I find the end behavior of the graph? First thing we need to look at is the degree of the graph. Is it odd or even? Now, the degree here is 3, which is odd. So if it's odd, I know that the end behavior is going to be in two opposite directions. So it's either starts down and ends up, or starts up and ends down. How do I know? I will need to look at the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient is the number multiplied by the leading term here. It's the constant multiplied by x for the leading term. Leading term is the first term in the function or in the equation, and of course it has the highest degree. So the leading coefficient here is 1, and I don't need to know what the number is, but I need to know if it's positive or negative. Now, the leading coefficient here is positive. It means that this graph will start with an increasing behavior. So it's going to start like that. Okay? And so it starts down and it's going to end up. Because the degree is odd, it means two different directions. Now, I started my graph here. I will need to go through the 0. and that is typical. Now, why did I cross the x-axis when I went through the 0? Because the multiplicity is 1. The multiplicity is odd. Multiplicity is 1, so it acts like a linear behavior. It just goes across the x-axis to the other side. Now, this of course has to go back down to the other 0, but its behavior at the other 0 is going to be different than its behavior here, because this 0 here has a multiplicity of 2, as we agreed. So what happens to the graph is, at this 0, it will reflect back up. It will touch the x-axis at this point, but it's going to reflect up. So if I'm looking at the sketch of my graph here, and the sketch is not accurate, if I want to do an accurate sketch, I will be finding specific points before, after the zeros, and between them, and find their actual values. But this is just a sketch for us to predict how the graph will look like. Now, I hope this helped you understand the meaning of zeros and multiplicity, and you understood how you can actually sketch the graph. Now it's time for you to practice. You have here another function that you can use to practice how to do this. Take care when you factor this function that you can actually take x squared as a common factor. If you have any questions, you can write that down in the comments and I'll be glad to solve them for you. And if you find the multiplicity of the zeros, you can write that in the comments as well, and I'll let you know if they're correct or not. Thanks for watching.